And welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast. My name is Jay, and I'm joined once again by the polarizing, ever polarizing Tyrone. And as evidenced by you hearing this broadcast, apparently we have made up after our pretty heated conversation last week. Tyrone, how you doing, pal?
I didn't know we made up. I thought we were still mad at each other, and that's the energy that I'm going with tonight.
That seems fair. That's usually your modus operandi anyway, so I'm fine with that. Just keep being derisive all you want, pal. But in all fairness, breaking kayfabe, breaking the fourth wall here, I do still love you, and it's the holiday season. I'm gonna say Christmas because I celebrate Christmas. So do you. Merry Christmas soon, my friend, and welcome to the month of December. And you'll always be near and dear to my heart.
Well, that just warmed me right back up. And a ho, ho, ho to you as well, my love.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very sweet of you. Let's not bring up my past with the ho-ho stuff. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we had a pretty spirited conversation last week, fueled by some red wine on my end and some tall boys on Tyrone's end. I have to tell you that we have a couple of very interesting topics to discuss today, but none more pressing than the ECW December to Dismember pay-per-view from 2006. Boy, was this a humdinger of a pay-per-view, Tyrone. I had a hard time watching it, full disclosure. I caught up on it this afternoon, and holy Moses, it was not easy to get through.
No, this one was. This is one of the it's genuinely known as one of the worst wrestling pay-per-views of all time. Why you made me do this, I don't know. I feel like it's a receipt because of me being a dick to you about everything about women. And I apologize, and I will never do that again because this was just absolutely uncalled for.
Well, yeah, we discussed it at the tail end of the podcast last week, and I will, I think both of us were a little fuzzy by the end of that one, but I will say that it wasn't necessarily the gift that kept on giving for me either, because I had to watch it too, and I was kind of kicking myself afterwards. I was like, oh, why couldn't we have covered like anything else?
Literally. Anything else? Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is only the gift that keeps on giving, in the sense that this is the herpes of wrestling pay-per-views.
Oh God. And we're off to the races, folks. Now, I propose this. Here's what I propose to you, Tyrone. How about, in the spirit of the holiday season, in the Christmas spirit, say, why don't we just call a truce, and for the next few pay-per-views that we cover, why don't we choose ones for each other that we know we're going to enjoy? We can still rebook it, and it's going to need a lot of work, but we at least know we're going to enjoy watching them. How's that sound? Then we can get back to hating each other after Christmas.
Does that mean I don't have to do anything from 2006 anymore? Because I am 100% down for that.
2006 is no longer on your dance card, pal.
Good, because this is 2 in a row, and I don't think my brain can handle anymore. I'm done. I'm done with 2006.
That's totally fine. I am too. I don't want to watch anymore either.
Anyway, how's your week been, though, bud? Now that we're friends again, did you do anything fun? Did anything happen? Any fun voicemails or text messages or snail mails or telegrams? Anything come to your door?
I got a candygram. Well, no.
Are you sure it was for you and not for Glenn Coco? I hope you get the reference.
I do not get the reference, unfortunately.
Jay, you need to watch Mean Girls, my friend.
I haven't. I just watched it. I don't remember Glenn Coco.
Glenn Coco is the one where they're handing out the candygrams. They go, 2 for you and 4 for Glenn Coco. You go, Glenn Coco, and none for Gretchen Wieners. And then he walks away. Come on.
I'm sorry. I haven't seen it enough times to make it quotable. If you want to talk about old school Anchorman or something like that, I might be able to hit you up. But Seinfeld, I'm all there. But no, Glenn Coco, I'll have to go back and put that one commit that one to memory. So if you bring it back up in passing conversation, I'll be able to hit that one right back to you.
If you want an Anchorman reference, I can tell you that watching this pay-per-view was like being in a glass case full of emotions.
It was. It absolutely was. I agree with you. Milk was a bad choice watching this pay-per-view. I'll tell you that much right now, because it curdled in my stomach as I was watching some of these matches. With that being said, though, my week was great. I know that your week was quite good. I'm glad to hear that all is well on your end. And now that we have, in fact, made up and become good friends again before Better Enemies comes back into full circle by the end of this particular podcast, which is well, let's hit on some of this week in wrestling history, as we usually touch on each week, folks. We have a couple of items we'd like to address, and then from there we'll get into the absolute train wreck that was December to Dismember. But as far as this week in wrestling history, Tyrone, what do you got for me, pal? What are you going to start off with?
I think we should start off with potentially a little bit of a tradition that we've done the last couple of weeks, and that's happy birthdays. We have a couple of birthdays that are celebrated today on December the 7th, and that is, first of all, Jon Moxley, a.k.a. Dean Ambrose.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Great shout out to him. Currently the AEW champion, has had a fairly long title reign over there. For me, wasn't the biggest Dean Ambrose fan. I thought that he had some good moments in WWE. In fact, he had a couple of really great moments. But more to the point, I think that he was never really given the opportunity to fully blossom as a main event talent. And I think towards the end of his run, he maybe got a little bit frustrated with the booking and the constant rewrites and the structure of the WWE and how everything is so polished and constantly rearranged. So I think that his enthusiasm for the product might have waned a bit towards the end. I think he said as much in interviews, but he's quite prosperous right now with his AEW run. And of course, his wife, Toronto's own Renee Paquette, expecting a child. So that's really exciting, especially around the holidays. They have a little one on the way. So let's wish them the absolute best, coming up in 2021. I think we could all use our absolute best in 2021, though.
You know what? Talking about Mox in WWE just briefly, I agree with you that the Dean Ambrose character didn't really hit what it should have. But you and I were both present at one of the matches in Toronto where he put on a hell of a show, and that was at Roadblock with him and Triple H. And I put that, honestly, probably at the top of the list of the best Dean Ambrose character matches of his career.
Oh, yeah, I can't argue that point. In fact, that would be one of the highs that I was just alluding to in terms of his best matches. I absolutely love that match. You and I were both there. I think it went pretty close to 40 minutes, that match, and it was a back and forth. It even got to the point where even you and I, who are fairly well read in the business, and we don't really fall susceptible to swerves that often. There was a couple of moments there where you and I were like, "Are they going to switch the title? Are they going to?
We 100% thought that. We thought that we were getting a title change that close to Mania, which we never would. But the little kid in both of us was like, "This is going to happen. We're going to see this. We're going to go out and celebrate afterwards."
Absolutely.
Then it did. And it didn't, but we still went out and celebrated.
But, that's a testament to both performers, not just Ambrose, but also Triple H. I mean, for all the negativity that people seem to have online about Triple H and him burying people and this and that, you do have to give him credit for being one of the best in the business. And that psychology that they had in that match, we talk about psychology all the time on this show, and, it's an internet, buzzword for smarks like us. But that was an absolute clinic, that match, and I hope that all the other talent in the building was watching that match at that night, because it was just a tour de force performance by both guys.
Couldn't agree more. So I think we should raise a glass and say happy birthday to Mox, bud, and all the best with the new family.
Absolutely.
Here's one more. I do have one more birthday that I want to touch on here, and that is on December the 7th, Ravishing Rick Rude was born, and boy, can you say somebody who was gone way too quickly. Like, there's a short list of wrestlers who unfortunately passed away way too early, and Rick Rude is near the top of that list for me. I think only Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Hennig would top that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I put Owen Hart in there too.
I don't know how I forgot about Owen there. I apologize for that one, but you're right.
No need to apologize whatsoever. Unfortunately, it's a case for us that as wrestling fans and as tremendous fans of all these performers, that there are so many that have left us too soon that sometimes it's hard to remember them all, and not trying to be glib or smug about it, but just honestly, there's just of them. that sometimes it's hard to remember them all in one breath. But to your point about Rick Rude, I mean, he was phenomenal. Absolutely. I mean, we talked about some of his matches, with the Jake the Snake feud was tremendous. From the standpoint of the in-ring work, the Cheryl Roberts on the tight stuff was just outstanding. And you and I were talking off air about how we might potentially, you had an idea about how you might rebook WrestleMania 5, if I'm not mistaken. What were you saying off air about that?
So just picture this. Instead of having Savage and DiBiase, sorry, WrestleMania 4, not 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. WrestleMania 4, my apologies.
Yeah. Instead of having DiBiase and Savage in the tournament finals, imagine if it was Savage and Rude went over, held the title for a year, went on, lost it to Hogan at 5, and then we went into a Mega Power story where Savage helped Hogan get the title. It was almost like a role reverse situation, but you still get up to the lust in your eyes, brother, I saw it. You still get to that, and you go into the main events, Saturday night's main event, you still have the turn, you get to Mania 6, and you have Savage versus Hogan on top instead of Warrior Hogan, because as much as the Warrior Hogan match was good, it really was a flop in the long run.
Well, the title run for Warrior for sure was. I mean, I don't think it was necessarily like a catastrophic flop, but certainly weren't doing the numbers or doing the business that they were when Hogan was on top. He was off for the better part of the spring, and when he came back in the summer, things started getting back on track. But yeah, absolutely, to your point, I mean, the highest buy rate ever for WrestleMania at that point. I mean, pay-per-view was fairly new at this point, obviously, but the highest pay-per-view buy rate at that time was for WrestleMania 5, and I think that's more or less resting on the shoulders of a Savage Hogan match. So had you waited a year and done that at the Sky Dome in Toronto, now the other thing too about this is that the business was starting to go on a bit of a decline by 1990. We had sort of reached the zenith of WWF's popularity by probably 88, 89, coming off the heels of WrestleMania 3. So if you go back to 1990, where business was starting to fall off a bit, had they had the Hogan Macho Man matchup in their pocket for WrestleMania 6 in front of a crowd the size of at the Sky Dome, 68,000, as opposed to being in the Trump Plaza Casino Arena, I think it would have been a much bigger presentation. It would have given the gravitas that the match deserved, and it would have absolutely kept the numbers and all the business indicators up much higher for that year, and they would have continued to prosper for a couple more years longer than they did into the mid-90s.
And even going from that, like, you look at WrestleMania 6, and you had Savage versus Dusty Rhodes, but you also had Rick Rude in a throwaway match with Jimmy Snuka, to which you could have put Rick Rude with Dusty Rhodes in that one. It didn't have to be the mixed tag, but I feel like Rude would have torn that house down.
Yeah, I can't argue that. The only thing I'll say is I think that with the booking of, I mean, obviously we would rebook it ourselves. I think we'll maybe touch on 6 one day. That'd be a fun one to do. But the booking of Dusty Rhodes and the Fed wasn't the best either, so I don't know how much they would have given him. But at the same time, to your point, Rick Rude, he should have had a much higher place on the card. And I think that him being champion at one point, everybody on the internet always talks about certain guys that never got the title that should have, and definitely Rude is very close to the top of that list. So having him go in and win the title and then drop it to Hogan at 5 would have been huge, would have been big business. And truthfully, anybody working with Hogan at that time was a made man. So it really didn't matter who you had going up against Hogan. It would have been a big time deal. And of course, Rude would have gotten an amazing match out of him as well. So I absolutely agree with you. And so again, to your point, gone way too soon. And we never did quite get to see the level that Rick Rude could have attained had he been given that ball.
Happy birthday, Rick Rude, from all of your lovely sweat hogs that love you to death.
Yeah, I'm not from Kansas City, but I'll be a sweat hog today.
Today we're just Ontario sweat hogs, and we'll take it. It's perfectly fine. Anyway, what do you got for us up next, Jay? I know you got something you want to talk about.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the In Your House D-Generation X pay-per-view. It was on December 7th, 1997, so 23 years ago today. And what an incredible little event. I mean, they had a really hard act to follow after the Montreal Screwjob, and they were obviously scrambling to figure out where the booking was going to go post Bret Hart leaving the company. So I think that the offering here was really good. The Steve Austin Rock match, you were really starting to see Steve Austin get that jetpack on his back see how incredibly over he was as a performer. He had this match with The Rock for the Intercontinental title, as I said, and this was the first time that Austin drove a vehicle into the arena. It was a pickup truck, the Stone Cold black pickup truck with the Stone Cold Steve Austin skull on the hood and the doors. He beat up some of the Nation members on the actual hood of the car, as well as giving D'Lo Brown a stunner on top of the roof of the truck. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of foreshadowing of what we'd see in the Attitude Era in terms of crazy stunts and spots. And then, of course, the Ken Shamrock and Shawn Michaels match. Shamrock was challenging Shawn Michaels for the WWF title, and you see Owen Hart run out and beat the crap out of Michaels after the match. This is the first time we'd seen Owen since the screw job. We'd seen Jim Neidhart a couple of weeks earlier on Raw try to join DX and get destroyed by DX and, of course, get sent packing down to WCW. But this is the first time we saw Bret's brother Owen come out and try to avenge what the Degeneration X had done to him. So it was a fun little event, and I thought they did a really, really good job considering how quickly they probably had to book this pay-per-view that was only, less than a month away from the screw job. So you have any memories of this one?
Well, I mean, as anybody who knows me knows that I was so devastated Bret Hart leaving. I couldn't watch this one. I was so torn up, and it hurt me deeply to know that the company was going on without him. That's a joke.
Yes.
To be perfectly honest with you, Jay, I've never seen this pay-per-view. I know that sounds weird, but I have never actually watched this one, and I don't know why.
Yeah, it's not a bad little pay-per-view. I mean, you get the crowning of the first ever WWF light heavyweight champion with Brian Christopher and Taka Michinoku. You got the Undertaker taking on Jeff Jarrett, which is kind of an unlikely match, but it was a kind of fun. I sometimes like those unlikely matches on pay-per-view. You don't really know why they're happening, but they're sort of fun to put these two guys together. So that was a fun one. Then you had LOD versus.
Was this the weird incarnation of Jeff Jarrett, where he was kind of the NWA champion, but also kind of WWF, and he didn't really know what he was doing?
He was. This is right before he aligned himself with Cornette and the Rock and Roll Express and Barry Windham and guys like that. He was doing that. He had that same outfit. He had that same kind of gimmick, but he hadn't aligned himself with the NWA quite yet. He ended up being the NWA North American champion for a while.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, this whole era, other than the screw job, I'm not going to lie, I'm not a 97 mark like you are, and so many other people are. I was 11, and I never really went back to watch a lot of it. I know I should, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know a lot about that era.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it's committed to memory for me. I remember it from childhood, and of course, I've gone back and watched it a few times as well. So I have a pretty good idea what's going on at the time. And so we're probably going to cover some stuff going into the new year that sort of coincides with this time frame as well. We might go into some 98 stuff coming up. I'm really looking forward to maybe touching on some of the goings on before WrestleMania 14 as well. So if we get there, but it all depends on what we decide to book. Do you have any other moments in wrestling history that you want to cover tonight, bud?
Yeah, I'm going to do one more, and I'm going to take us way back to way before either of us were born, and that was on December the 7th, 1976. Chief Jay Strongbow and Billy White Wolf won the WWF Tag Team titles in a tournament, beating Nikolai Volkov and Tor Kamala in the finals.
Aha. Yeah, this is a little bit outside of my purview in terms of I don't remember watching this match. I know some of the performers, obviously, but no, it's actually kind of fun to think about Volkov in the Federation too back in 76. It's like 9 or 10 years before his real biggest moment of his career, being a tag team with the Iron Sheik. So I've always been a fan of Volkov. That's really kind of fun to think you can go back 10 years. He's there on the card. And of course, Chief Jay Strongbow is such a huge part of a lot of people's childhoods that are back at that age. Maybe they're, in their late 40s or pushing 50. They remember Strongbow so strongly, just like San Martino. He was almost as over as San Martino in some markets. So that's a fun one to pull up, buddy.
I'm actually kind of surprised that when you think Nikolai Volkov, you don't think Virgil 2.0, considering what a new generation mark you are.
No, I do think of him in the $1 million corporation, but not nearly as much as I do. I mean, member of the Bolsheviks, and then of course being with the Sheik and with Freddie Blassie was great. So, yeah, you're not going to touch the Sheik stuff with me. I think you think about him at WrestleMania 1, of course, and then had a really great run. Even in the early 90s when he teamed up with Sergeant Slaughter, that was a kind of a fun tag team as well. So that was after he turned back to being Mr. America. So, yeah, I like that choice. That's a great one, buddy.
Yeah, I like to dig deep every now and then and find things that we wouldn't normally talk about, but they deserve some time.
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely.
But anyway, I think it's time that you pull the goddamn trigger and let's do this. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. Now I'm gonna kind of full disclosure this one because I didn't give it a ton of thought before I gave this one to you. I don't know that I'm going to necessarily argue with much of what you're booking this today. It can't be any worse than what we already have. So I'll probably argue certain points, but in terms of the way you're going to book this, I can't see it being anything that I'm going to disagree with very strongly. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have the World Wrestling Entertainment presenting ECW December to Dismember, which took place on December 3rd, 2006 at the James Brown Arena in Augusta, Georgia. We had an attendance of 4,800. The buy rate was 90,000. I can't imagine having to fork out your $45 or $50 to watch this on pay-per-view, terrestrial pay-per-view, as opposed to a network special. Just a couple of notes going into this event. We are just coming off of a pretty interesting year in the WWE. We had seen the reformation of DX. John Cena was really ascending as a single star, as the top guy in the company. We had also seen the innovation of a couple of new pay-per-view concepts. They had gone from the Taboo Tuesday previously. Now they have gone into the Cyber Sunday, which we've also covered in our archives. This
may be the only pay-per-view that was worse than Cyber Sunday. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, this was rough. This time frame, I'll be full disclosure, I wasn't really watching WWE, wrestling in general at the time. I had taken a break in the summer of 2006 and didn't come back until WrestleMania 23 in April of 2007. So this wasn't even on my radar at the time. Certainly by watching the pay-per-view and having seen it today, I wasn't missing much. And I think the first thing I'd say about this before you get into the rebooking, buddy, is just from the very moment this show opens, it is the antithesis of ECW. This is not ECW. And I'm not an ECW fan, per se, as we've talked about. But this is so far removed from what ECW was. You already know off the top, this is not going to be ECW.
So on that note, I was a giant ECW fan growing up, and I actually did the tape trading. I tried to find as much of it as I could, and you couldn't be more right about this. Like, you look at ECW One Night Stand in 2005, and that was done almost perfectly. It was so goddamn good. They had all the ECW originals, or at least as many as they could get. They had a couple of people who were under contract with the company that revised old gimmicks, like Jericho doing the Lionheart, and it was just perfect. You fast forward 1 year later to ECW One Night Stand 2006, and it was still good, but you started getting a little bit more of the Fed. Like, all of a sudden, John Cena's on an ECW pay-per-view, Kurt Angle's on an ECW pay-per-view, Randy Orton's on an ECW pay-per-view. That's just things that wouldn't have happened. I think Joey Styles summed that one up perfectly when he said, Pyro at an ECW pay-per-view? What's going on?
Yeah.
And that's when you realized, okay, they've got some things. And it was right after One Night Stand 2006 that they actually launched the rebranded ECW, which so many people were looking forward to until we got the first episode and we got that damn ECW zombie out of nowhere.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And I'll take the ECW Zombie a million times over watching Matt Striker and Balls Mahoney go into a regular wrestling match. Because no, Balls Mahoney doesn't wrestle. I'm sorry, Balls Mahoney fights.
No, I can't argue that point at all. I mean, I will say, watching it today, I thought that Stryker's strong suit was definitely his mic work. He was really good on the mic. I thought he cut a really solid promo before the match. I will give it that. But before we get too ahead of ourselves on the match listings, what I'd like to do is, based on the fact that we kind of know that you're just going to eradicate whatever current card is on in history, I'm just going to go ahead and just read off the entire card right now. It's not that long. And then from there, we're just going to pretend it never happened, and you're going to rebook the whole thing from scratch. And I'm not going to interrupt you. We'll just go back and forth discussing what you've rebooked. But does that sound good to you? We'll just read off the card as is, and then just throw it in the trash.
Oh, Jay, you know me so well. You know I definitely did not keep a single thing on this one. And the one thing I did get a little pop at there where you said it doesn't take long to go over this card. That's because the card ended 45 minutes before it was supposed to. So yes, please read on, and then we'll get into what I have.
Okay, well, I'll start off with the dark match, which was Stevie Richards versus Rene Dupree, which is a barn burner of a match for an ECW crowd. And then we go into the first match on the card, which is the Hardy Boys, Matt and Jeff, taking on M&M, Joey Mercury, Johnny Nitro, accompanied by Melina. And the Hardy Boys got the W there. Balls Mahoney defeated Matt Striker. Elijah Burke and Sylvester Turkey defeated the FBI, Little Guido, and Tony Mamaluke. Davari with the Great Khali defeated Tommy Dreamer. I'm having a hard time even reading this. It's so terrible. Ariel and Kevin Thorne defeated Kelly Kelly and Mike Knox in a mixed tag team match. And then, of course, your big, huge, unbelievably over main event is the Extreme Elimination Chamber match, because you need to put more emphasis on the Extreme in an Elimination Chamber match. Bobby Lashley defeated The Big Show with Paul Heyman, Test, Rob Van Dam, Hardcore Holly, and CM Punk. So with that being
that was a main event on an ECW pay-per-view.
It sure was.
Bobby Lashley winning.
Yeah,
I'm already hot, and we're not even getting into it. So I'm done. I'm so angry at that already. But yeah, let's do this. Let's try and have some fun, and let's see if I can do it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just take a mulligan and see what we can do here, bud. So your opening contest is what? What do you have for us?
So my opening contest, I did things weirdly here, where there was a tournament set up for the number one contendership of the ECW Championship to face Big Show later on in the show. So spoiler alert, Big Show is still your ECW champ, because there's some things that I didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So our opening match is Sabu versus Rob Van Dam in an Extreme Rules match. It's a bit of a throwback. We get the ECW faithful happy by seeing these guys right off the get-go. They put a huge, they go about 20 to 25 minutes. All the spots, all the weapons, all the tables, Van Terminators, barbed wire, everything that your heart desires. And surprisingly, we have Sabu going over.
I don't hate this. I think it's a great way to open up a pay-per-view, especially with ECW fans, people who are fans of the original product. You give them exactly what they want right off the top. You give them a couple of originals going at it in a match that, again, it's a callback to some of previous feuds in ECW. The only thing I'll take issue with this one is 20 to 25 minutes for me for a Rob Van Dam and Sabu match in 2006 is maybe a little ambitious. I don't think Sabu necessarily in 2006 was going to be up for a 25-minute match, especially with the bumps they were kind of going to take in the match. But to your point, I think this is absolutely the perfect way to open up an ECW pay-per-view. You have a couple of originals that can still go to a fairly high level and just tear the house down for the crowd. I think this is the perfect way to start. It's certainly better than what we got.
What isn't better than what we got? I'm sorry, but I'm gonna toot my own horn throughout this whole thing, and I'm gonna say that I booked this show and it's better. And this may be one of the only shows that we pretty much agree with everything throughout the same thing, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, and as am I. I mean, I know it's deviating from our game plan. Usually we're pretty heated with each other, and we might still find things that we are contentious about tonight, no doubt. Based on last week's over-the-top arguing and sort of bickering back and forth, I think it's okay to give the listeners a break, and we can show that we can sometimes agree to agree as well. So with that being said, I really don't think you can do much better with that particular opener. I think you did a great job. You hit the nail right on the head. And again, having those two guys with that callback, with that history, and two of the most celebrated ECW stars in history, you're not going to get a better opener than that. You're satiating the ECW crowd right off the bat. So good on you, man.
Well, thank you. I try. Let's move on to the next, shall we?
Absolutely. What do we got?
So we have Al Snow versus Joey Matthews, who in ECW, that was his name, but in the Fed, we all know him as Joey Mercury. So I did a bit of a throwback there. He was under contract, but he's doing his old gimmick. And we have Al Snow doing the job for Joey Matthews so that he goes over. He's the one under contract, stays strong. Everybody goes home happy, in my opinion, there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not bad at all. So Joey Mercury, you said, goes over?
Yeah, he does, because he's at this point, Al Snow was under contract but not really doing anything, whereas Joey Mercury was still part of M&M, so you want to keep him strong.
Yeah, he's younger as well, and it's not going to hurt Al Snow to take a loss either. He was doing the full head gimmick as well. He was doing the old look with the original trunks, or was he wearing the snowman cometh trunks, or what was Al Snow's presentation here?
Oh, he was the blue and black trunks with the help me written on his head, and he had head with him.
Nice. I like it. It's a throwback. I also like that now it makes sense to me. So this is exactly the way it should have been done, that if you're going to have an ECW pay-per-view and you're going to introduce some younger talent to help freshen up the product and introduce people that you want to try to elevate into a star or into a higher position on the card, this is the way you do it. You have them wrestle originals. This is exactly the way that you should be getting over talent now, or even throughout the course of all of WWE for the last how many years, is you get them over by having them go up against each other in matches where the younger talent can get over by having a spirited contest with some of the more established stars. So I think this makes a ton of sense. And Al Snow is going to give him a tremendous match. I mean, I bet you Al Snow could still go today and it give you a tremendous match. So yeah, this is a good one. I like this.
Al Snow's the only person other than Undertaker that made Maven look good, so that speaks volumes of him.
Yeah, you get no argument from me. So would it be a clean finish, or would you have Al Snow maybe go for maybe try to knock out Mercury with head and then maybe get a roll up, or how does it? What's the finish on this?
This is a clean finish, just because there's going to be some pretty gnarly, graphic, violent matches in this. So this was one of the few that it's just a straight up one-on-one match, and Joey Matthews gets the win.
I like that. That's great, because that's one of my biggest things that I'm not a fan of for ECW is this. I found that it was just too much blood and guts. So to get yourself a couple of clean pins and clean matches, clean finishes, I really enjoy that. That's great. I like that a lot.
Now for the next one, I got to ask you a question. I know you're not a big ECW mark, but when it comes to tag teams from ECW, who do you think is the best ever?
I mean, I guess you'd have to go with the Dudleys, wouldn't you?
I should have rephrased that and said the best ever other than the Dudley Boys.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the Impact Players?
Ding, ding, ding. You hit the nail on the head. So for my next match, we have the Impact Players taking on Elijah Burke and Sylvester Terkay. I kept them together for this because we need to build new talent. I get that. And Elijah Burke was somebody who I thought could get a lot of work out of people and who had a lot of talent in the world. Terkay, on the other hand, was just kind of like Vladimir Kozlov, just there, kind of big, nothing special. But I figure Elijah Burke going up with Lance Storm is fantastic.
No, I like that a lot. So yeah, I think that this is again, this goes back to my point earlier. And again, folks, we're going to agree on a lot of this today because we both sort of kicked ourselves in the ass for deciding to record this one. This was a really rough one to cover. So yeah, this goes back to my exact point in the previous match. I mean, you're going to have some established stars, and you're going to have them go up against a couple of new ones. You have the Heater and Sylvester Terkay, who is going to be there as, the lack of a better term, he's going to be Diesel to Eliza's Shawn. I like this all already. And sorry, did you say who's going over in this one?
I haven't said yet, but in this one, I'm actually going to put the Impact players over because I don't think it hurts Terkay and Burke at all. I think that they were new enough that just them having a competitive match with them shows that they can go, and you put two legends in the ring, such as Storm Incredible, and everything's great with these two. And it doesn't hurt them. They come back the next week on TV, they challenge again. We keep getting different matches from them against different tag teams, and they end up going over on newer people and building themselves up.
Yeah, no, I think that that's the way to go. You don't necessarily. A lot of people have the misconception that if you're younger talent, that you have to go over on somebody established to get the rub. I don't think that that's the case at all. You can have a really spirited contest, like you just alluded to, having those two teams go back and forth and giving them a really, really solid, giving the Impact players a really, really solid match. I don't think it's going to hurt the younger talent to do the job to the established stars, as long as it's done correctly and as long as they get enough of their stuff in the match that they look strong coming out of it. And you can see that the Impact players were really given a competitive match. I think that you really hit it again on this one. And this is exactly, again, I hate to repeat myself, but to my point earlier, I think this is the way you get over younger talent, whether it's a win or a loss. As long as you're able to establish the younger stars by having them be competitive and comparable to the established incumbent stars, I think that you're doing great.
And to go off of that, like I always look back at, I think it was Monday Night Raw in '94, and I can't believe I'm giving props to Bret Hart, but Bret Hart and the 1-2-3 Kid. You didn't have to put the Kid over, but goddamn, did he get on the map just in that match alone?
Yeah, absolutely. You put him over in that match, and you could see, Bret Hart giving the respect afterwards, giving him a handshake and a hug. It's not dissimilar from what the Undertaker was doing a little while in 2002, 2003. I mean, you see that ladder match with Jeff Hardy on Raw, and then after the match, Undertaker giving Jeff his props. It gives them the credibility. It gives them the younger talent. It gives them in the it shows that they have the respect of the established stars, and it shows that they were able to give the established stars a really, really good competitive match, give them a run for their money, makes them look like $1 million, and then they can go off on their own and create their own programs and get over on their own. But it's almost like getting that seal of approval or that nod of approval from whomever they're taking on. So yeah, I think this is a great way to have these guys go forward.
Yeah, I think I booked this very well. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm gonna move on to the next one, which we have a 4-way match featuring Super Crazy, Little Guido, Psychosis, and Kid Cash. Tell me this is not going to burn the house down.
Is it a 4-way 4 corners match, or is it like a Texas tornado type thing? What do you have for this one?
It's a 4-way elimination match. So
okay, all 4 guys are in the ring at the same time. It's not like you have to tag somebody in to get somebody in, right?
Exactly. So we have, unfortunately, as much as I love them, Little Guido is going out first, because when I think of what these 4 guys can do in the ring, you give me the other 3, and I feel like there's going to be a lot more spots, which I'm not a spot monkey, but I do love a lot of triple threat luchador matches.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, it to me, it beckons back to some of the stuff we saw in Nitro in the early to mid years of Nitro, not so much towards the end of Nitro or even like that kind of killed off the Lucha division for me, was kind of over by the end of 98. I didn't see a ton of it in 99 or even 2000. It was okay, but wasn't nearly what it was at the beginning. So this kind of brings that full circle for me as well, seeing that kind of action, which in a lot of ways was introduced to North America by ECW originally. So you have to give props. It's kind of giving a nod back to ECW and their roots in that community and in that presentation of the product. And I agree with you, Little Guido, as much as you love him, he was also probably one of the most established guys in North America in that match, in terms of his gimmick and being part of the FBI and all that kind of thing. So when you have him in the match and he goes out first, you're just sort of bringing a little bit of star power to the mainstream audience, and then the people who are marks for lucha, the luchadors and AAA and things of that nature, they're going to get right into the psychosis and the and guys like that. So the super crazies and all that kind of thing. So that's pretty good. Who do you have going over in this one?
Well, I have the three of them left, so I have Psychosis and Super Crazy going at it, while Kid Cash kind of plays the smarmy heel and lays back and goes out of the ring until Super Crazy all of a sudden eliminates Psychosis out of nowhere. He's celebrating, Kid Cash runs in, roll up, Kid Cash wins.
Okay, yeah, that's good. You get him over. He was fairly new at the time, to the WWE audience anyway. Didn't last very long there, but he was fairly new to the product or new to the presentation there. So anybody who was a casual that maybe wasn't the biggest ECW fan but wanted to watch a WWE pay-per-view or WWE presented pay-per-view would have gotten a fun little introduction to him. So yeah, that makes sense. And again, you're having him go over against established guys. So the pattern is very, very clear in the way you book this, but I think the pattern makes a lot of sense. You have either the established stars go over or they do the job, but either way, the goal is to get over the younger talent. So I think that this was booked, perfectly as well.
Do you remember when Kid Cash and Jamie Noble did their version of the Pitbulls?
No, I do not.
Oh, they actually did in WWE. They were a tag team called the Pitbulls, and it was a total throwback to the original Pitbulls. And I think it could have had so much potential because those are two high flying in-ring veterans who can do anything really. And they just, because they were small guys, I don't know if they just didn't see them as a real threat, but goddamn, what could have been?
Yeah, no, I don't have any recollection of that at all. But I do remember it being. I do remember at the time. I mean, the cruiserweights were more geared towards SmackDown in the early to mid 2000s. Even though once you got on even to 2007, 2006, the cruiserweights were predominantly on SmackDown. So I don't have any recollection of that particular team. But again, I think that this would, for the casual fan that was watching, that wanted to see a WWE show or even just a wrestling show on a random early December Sunday, this would have been a great way to give a light to some of these guys that were maybe underneath or maybe wouldn't have had that spotlight thrust upon them had they been on main roster product.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, the Pitbulls were definitely a SmackDown only team, and I believe it was 2007 that they had a small run. But yeah, they should have been a lot more than they were. But I say that about Jamie Noble all the time. I think he just could have been so much more.
Oh, I agree. I think his best stuff he was doing was when he was with Nydia in 2002, and they were doing that redneck trailer park gimmick. I absolutely love that stuff. That was.
But also just a couple of years ago when he was part of J&J Security for Seth Rollins, that was also fantastic.
No, that was outstanding too. I won't disagree with that at all. But I just thought that the promos and the vignettes they were doing for Jamie Noble and Nydia were just fabulous, especially. I think there was one where maybe one of their relatives died and they ended up getting like $100,000 or something like that. And it was just outstanding stuff. So I think that, that's one of the biggest things about this business too, is you can have guys that are tremendous workers in ring. And yes, if they don't have the mic skills, you can put them with a mouthpiece, you can put them with a manager, whatever you want to do. But at a certain point, if that talent doesn't have the requisite charisma to get over and communicate to the audience themselves through, verbal skills or nonverbal actions, they're never going to get to a certain level. And my point with that is somebody like a Jamie Noble literally had it all. He could work his ass off, and his promo work was just second to none. So I think he's a very, very underrated talent.
If you ever get a chance, go back and watch some of his Ring of Honor stuff, because when he was doing the James Gibson gimmick, it was incredible. He was a heavyweight title contender there, and it was exactly what he needed.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That's one great thing about Ring of Honor as well, is that you look at so many of the guys that have been championship contenders, or rather held the title back, in that promotion, that so many of them were undersized compared to what we are used to in the monster factory, for the lack of a better term, in WWE. And we've all been sort of conditioned to believe that the bigger you are, the more impressive the physique, the more imposing you are, the bigger the star you are. And so often is the case that some of the smaller guys in the business, guys that are 6 foot, or maybe even, to me, 6 foot or 6'2" isn't small, but compared to some of the other larger stars, obviously it would be. But you look at guys like Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, CM Punk. I mean, the list goes on and on of guys who end up becoming. Jericho's another one. Look at all these different people who had the opportunity to become big stars. Sometimes they had to fight through a bunch of BS to get there. But with Ring of Honor, you had guys that were just put in that position because they were amazing. They didn't have to fight through red tape and bureaucracy to get to that level, which I think is super refreshing.
Oh, and kind of full circle of all the names that you just mentioned, so many of them got their start in ECW.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, they did, for sure.
Well, I'm going to move on to the next one, because I don't want to keep pretty much sucking Jamie Noble's dick without getting paid. So
I think there's an Arby's gift card in the mail, pal.
Oh my goodness, so many beef and cheddar melts. I'm so excited.
I
But
come over and join you for that one.
yes, you would.
The
I know
Arby's,
you would.
not the act that got you the Arby's.
Yeah. No fellatio for you. I get it.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, we have. I kind of did have to keep some current stars, obviously, in this. So we got Mike Knox versus CM Punk, because there was a storyline going on that we saw in the original pay-per-view, where Mike Knox's girlfriend, Kelly, took the microphone and wished CM Punk good luck in the Elimination Chamber. Sorry, the Extreme Elimination Chamber. And it made him hot. And I know it led to matches down the line with Punk and Knox, but I thought, why not just squash it here? We don't need to see this anymore, because, the only reason Mike Knox was on TV, I hate to say it, was because Kelly was there. And it gave him something to do. The guy wasn't the best worker. He didn't have any charisma. He didn't have mic skills. The highlight of his career was aces and eights, and that tells you a lot about somebody.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I don't hate this. I think it's good that you do have some fresh blood against fresh blood as well. They were both fairly new to the company at this point. I don't think CM Punk had been there that long, certainly not on television that long. So it does make sense to have these two guys go up against each other. I do like the idea of squashing the feud. It was a nothing feud anyways. It wasn't going to go anywhere, with the exception of maybe a couple of really stupid stip matches on ECW TV going forward. Yeah, I think it's important that you do have some matches where you showcase new talent and not in the ring with established stars. As much as I think it's important to get younger talent over by putting them with established stars, I think sometimes you have to let certain guys shine. And certainly this would be a showcase for CM Punk more than anything. I don't think that you'd get a match out of Mike Knox. I don't think he was a bad worker, but this is definitely more to put a spotlight on CM Punk more than anything else, I would think.
Well, that's it. Like, if anybody's going to get charisma and work out of Mike Knox, it's CM Punk. CM Punk to me is the same as a Bryan Danielson or a Paul London for that generation, but for older generations, it's kind of like a Shawn Michaels or a Bret Hart, where he can get a good match out of anybody. Oh my God, I gave another props to Bret Hart. What the hell is going on with me right now?
You're not thinking about his puffy hair or his mouth being open when he wrestles, so maybe you're giving him a little bit more credit because he deserves it. But that's besides the point. To your point, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, CM Punk, he's never been one of my favorites. He's obviously extremely talented. I am not a fan of his. I don't know him personally, but from everything I've seen or read of him or watched him in interviews, I don't think that he's the kind of person that I would be inviting to my Christmas dinner. I'm not a fan of his attitude or his smugness. In fact, I think he's kind of a dick. But that's besides the point. His in-ring work speaks for itself. I do take issue with CM Punk, just to get off topic a little bit here. I do take issue with CM Punk being touted as one of like the big stars, the biggest stars in the last 15 years. I think that he had a really good run in 2011 after the pipe bomb stuff, and of course he left in 2014. But at the same time, I think that his rise sort of came and went. And I don't think that by the time he left in 2014, he was nearly as over being either a babyface or a heel or just a performer in general. I don't think he was nearly as over as he had been, say, in 2011 and 2012. I think that he crescendoed, and I think that his time came and went. That's my opinion of CM Punk. I wouldn't say he's a flash in the pan, but I definitely don't think he's given a lot more credit than I think he deserves as being a draw.
And this is where we get back to the title of the show, because Jay, I think that's one of the dumbest goddamn things that you've ever said. Okay. Who are you going to put better than CM Punk out of his era? You're going to put Big Dave ahead of him? You're going to put Kane ahead of him? You're going to put Alberto Del Rio ahead of him? None of these guys could hold a flame to CM Punk when it came to in-ring charisma, mic skills, everything. The guy had it all. He was just a little bit of a prick, and I get that, but you wanted that. And I feel like the only reason you're not inviting him to your Christmas dinner is because, I'm just going to assume I'm there too, you and I can't be doing whippets in the fridge and then go and hang out with him because he's straight edge.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing whippets anyways. I'd probably be spiking eggnog or something like that. But listen, I didn't say anything about his in-ring work. I think his in-ring work is tremendous. In fact, I believe I just said that. I'm just saying that him being touted as one of the biggest draws in the last 15 years, I think is complete and utter nonsense. I think he had his time. I think he did go through a period where he was super hot, and he was coming off the heels of that pipe bomb promo, which was extremely controversial at the time, and he was riding off of that. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. Some of the booking that he had during that era too was just horrendous. Him being the champion.
Okay.
400.
Hold on. I gotta cut you off for a second here, just while this thought is fresh in my head, and I apologize. But we're talking about the biggest draws in the last 15 years, let's say, because that lines up with his run.
Yeah.
Other than, I don't know, John Cena, Randy Orton, maybe Big Dave, maybe Rey Mysterio. Who else are you throwing in there, though? Because there weren't, you could throw in The Undertaker, you could throw in Edge, but they were already established by this point. I'm looking at people who, you look at 15 years ago, that's when Batista won his first title. That's when Cena won his first title. Who else is in that mix?
Well, the way I look at it, though, is we got to a point with the WWE as well that it became more about the actual show and the actual product itself, more so than an actual single performer drawing. I think that if you took a look at one performer that sort of moved the needle in terms of drawing power over that 15-year period, it would probably be Cena. Other tan that, you look at it's more of an amalgamation of all the talents put together. WrestleMania tickets are sold in November without any card being announced. It's about the show now more than it is about the actual performers on it. So I don't know that there's necessarily anybody other than, say, a Cena who has been more of a big-time draw as a singular performer than him, because everybody else was kind of lumped together as, on that Mania poster. It wasn't like WrestleMania 3 where you had Hogan and Andre on the poster, or WrestleMania 5 where you had Hogan and you had Savage, or you had Austin and Rock at WrestleMania 17. That was the big draw. This is now you have everybody in the kitchen sink on the poster, and Cena's probably the only one that moves the needle as a singular star, in my opinion.
All right, I get your argument, but I'm going to respectfully say that I disagree and that you're wrong. We're not gonna get hot like we did last week. I don't think so, at least. But
I don't think so either. I don't have the energy tonight.
the CM Punk Undertaker feud, one of the best things ever. The CM Punk Jericho feud, fantastic. When he was doing the Straight Edge Society, and he was essentially playing a weird cross between Charles Manson and Jesus. That was incredible. You can't tell me that wasn't great booking and that it moved the needle, because it had people talking, it had people hating him for all the right reasons.
No, again, I'm not going to argue with him being an in-ring performer. And maybe to a degree it moved the needle. Yes, I agree with you. But for somebody to tell me that CM Punk is on the level of drawing power that, say, a John Cena or like a Steve Austin or a Hulk Hogan or somebody like that is, to me, is absolutely ludicrous. And there's a lot of people online that seem to think that CM Punk is like the second coming and that he is the guy that saved the WWE in 2012 or 2011. And I don't agree with that. I think it's a big machine at that point. And yes, he was an important part of that machine. But was he the one that was fueling that engine? Not to me. Cena was still that guy. And if you're going to pick out one guy who was going to be a singular star that breaks out over and above everybody else from a pure box office standpoint, I'm not talking about in-ring work, but from box office, it's Cena. It's not CM Punk.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, Cena gets box office. He was in the Marine. That drew hundreds of dollars. I get it. But you look at a month previous to this at the Survivor Series, you had DX teaming with the Hardys and CM Punk. And who was the crowd chanting for the entire match?
Yes, I agree with you. I've
So
seen that.
I personally think that CM Punk deserves to be in the conversation, not at the level of, but in the conversation with the Austins, the Hogans, the Cenas, because let's be real, no one's ever going to touch those three. And if they have, or if they will, we haven't seen them yet, because God knows who the next one's going to be. It could be, I don't know, like I was watching 205 the other day and I saw this dude, and I think his name was Austin Gray. He is an old throwback to an 80s rocker with a mullet and a mustache, and I just feel like this guy smokes cigarettes standing by a Trans Am all the time, but it could be him. You just don't know what fans are going to gravitate to.
When did you join 205 Live?
Oh, no, I didn't join it because, God, I haven't been 205 since I think I was 11, but shit, it would be fantastic to be able to do that again.
I'm just picturing you. This is your Halloween costume next year. You're going to be Austin Gray. You're going to go out and get a rental Trans Am, and you're going to be smoking darts and drinking a bottle of Thunderbird or something like that. I don't know, but no. I can't agree with you. Unfortunately, on this point, it's just not going to happen for me. I don't think that you can put CM Punk in the conversation with guys like Austin, Hogan, and Rock and guy. I just don't see it. I do agree that he did have drawing power. I'm not saying that he didn't draw. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that for people to anoint him as some kind of Mount Rushmore of biggest stars in the history of the business is absolutely ludicrous to me. I'd put him on the level of a guy like, say, an Edge or a Jericho, where these guys we never quite got to that next level, but they were damn close. So I'd say that if you're going to do a Mount Rushmore of guys that could have been biggest stars in the business, but never quite got to that level, I'd certainly put him on that Mount Rushmore. But to put him along the side of Flair, Hogan, Rock, Austin, whoever else you want to put in there, it's just not going to happen for me.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you this just because we need some filler on this show, let's be real. Who's your Mount Rushmore then? Like, if you're picking 4 people to be your Mount Rushmore, who is it?
It depends on the criteria of the Mount Rushmore.
All right, let's go with overall. Like, they've got to have a combination of in-ring skills, mic skills, the look. They not necessarily live the gimmick, but you believe that is their gimmick. All of the above. Who is your top 4?
They live the gimmick. Well, obviously, number 1 would be Taker.
But I see, this is where I'm already going to argue with you, because yes, he did live the gimmick to a degree, but he wasn't dead. Nobody believed that he was dead. Whereas if you had given me Steve Austin, I could understand that people believe that he's a redneck who drinks beer and flips off his boss. But no one's going to look at Undertaker and be like, that's a dead guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can't be with him. He's a zombie.
that gimmick evolved through. I mean, yes, it started off as a dead man, but I don't think that anybody took it literally that he was a dead man. The original concept for him was that he was a Undertaker. He was a guy that created tombstones and made caskets. He evolved into the dead man, but nobody ever believed that he was actually dead. Now, there was a period of time where he was touted, having these supernatural abilities, especially in the mid to late 2000 or 90s when he was facing Kane and guys like that. But I don't think that he was ever literally sort of being taken as a dead man by the audience. People just understood that his gimmick was death more than anything else. So I would make that point for myself. I know where you're going with this. You're probably going to say guys like Austin, Flair. I'm sure Hogan's on there for you begrudgingly, and maybe Rock is on there for you too. I don't know. For me, my Mount Rushmore.
I'm not gonna lie. You didn't get a single one of mine there.
Okay, well let's just hear yours then. What are yours?
No. Continue. Finish yours, and then I will doubt out mine.
So is the criteria the biggest draw, or is it just is the drawing power having anything to do with it, or is it just basically like who lived the gimmick?
The criteria is in-ring, charismatic, microphone, believable gimmick.
Yeah.
Not necessarily live the gimmick, but a believable gimmick.
Yeah.
And crowd reaction. Doesn't have to be drawing.
Okay.
Crowd reaction that the crowd bought into it.
I would probably go with Jake Roberts, Undertaker, Steve Austin, and Bret Hart.
I am actually genuinely surprised that there was no Kevin Nash or Sid or Vader or any of the people that you just...
That's a different list altogether, pal.
I mean, if I'm going with mine, I'm going Randy Savage. I'm going... You know what? You did get one of them. I'm going Ric Flair.
Yeah.
The other two are kind of a toss-up. Like, I am going to put CM Punk on that list. I know that people are going to hate it, but I'm going to put CM Punk on that list, and I'm also going to put Eddie Guerrero on that list.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that. That works. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not going to argue with your list. It's your list, right? So it's all up to personal preference, and I think a lot of it comes down to just being biased towards our favorites. I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to separate yourself from your emotional connection with certain people to dismiss, one way or the other, whether or not they were this or that. I mean, I know for myself, I know Bret wasn't the strongest on the mic, but he wasn't horrible on the mic. And I think that he checks every other box of the criteria that you just provided in spades. So for me, I definitely would put him on there. I mean, talk about living the gimmick. He was the excellence of execution. Jake Roberts goes without saying. Undertaker goes without saying, and Steve Austin, obviously, he built a career being a turned up version of himself, a volume on 10 version of himself. So I don't think it gets much more real than just playing yourself in much higher tempo or higher volume. So, both of us are going to agree to disagree on our lists. There's certain guys that I've always thought that for me, I know this is going to get heat, but for me, I think that Flair is a little bit, I don't want to say he's not overrated, but I definitely, for myself, my own personal taste and my own personal opinion, don't put him up with the kind of reverence and gravitas that everybody else does. I myself put Bret above Flair, but that's my opinion. I realize that a lot of people are going to disagree with that. That's just the way I feel about it.
I feel like you and Lauren, who is my wife, should have a little conversation there, just because when I bought a Ric Flair t-shirt, she looked at me and went, "Why are you supporting this old, haggard, horrible old man?"
No, I'm never gonna argue with his contributions to the business whatsoever. I mean, he is one of the greatest ever, without question. It's just for my personal taste. I think Bret's better, and that's just me. But
all right. I think we need to get back on track here because we've been sidebarred for a little while there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do one thing here, and I'm going to come back to it at the end of the show. I want to do one more bit of a Mount Rushmore question. I want you to sit on it for a little while. I want you to think of the 4 most overrated gimmicks. because I feel like you might have CM Punk on that list, in the history of the business. And we'll get back to that after we're done the card, okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, so moving on to my next match, I have another tag team match. And that is, so for the purposes of this show, we signed one human being to a contract for this, just like they did in the original ECW One Night Stand. I kind of took that as my stomping grounds. So we have Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman versus Axel Rotten and Balls Mahoney in a Taipei death match. Not a Texas death match, but a Taipei death match.
Interesting, a Taipei death match. What are the rules of a Taipei death match again? I don't recall.
So, from my understanding, a Taipei death match is when you put a whole bunch of double-sided tape on your hands, and then you dip your hands into glass. And then you have shards of glass on your hands as you're fighting somebody.
This sounds to me like it might be a little too extreme for a WWE ECW match. How do you get away with this one?
You just do it. You just do it. Like, I feel like maybe they told them they were going to do something else, and then they got to the ring and just decided, hey, we're going to put shards of glass on our hands and cut each other open while Sandman is drunk off his ass and bleeding profusely in the corner. This whole match, let's be real, was for the crowd to hear Enter Sandman and see that entrance.
Well, that's so much of any of his presentations or any of his involvements in the WWE ECW genre, if you want to call it that. Any of his involvement in that was very much the entrance, and that was it. I mean, you weren't going to get more much else than that from him. I mean, he could work okay, I guess, but it was. I mean, you look at the ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view. That's the whole reason he was there, was just for that entrance and the beer. He wasn't there for any other reason, really.
That's all you need him for. Like, as an ECW mark myself, the Sandman's not a good worker.
No,
but he could take a beating, he could give a beating, and he was surprisingly flexible for an alcoholic of his age.
Yeah, and I think he's still, playing something of the same thing in real life now too. I think he's still got his regular bar and his regular. So I don't know what he's up to now. All the best to Sandman, but I hope that he's taking a little bit better care of himself, especially when you see some of the stuff that he did back in the mid to late 2000s. He really did a number on himself, both in and out of the ring. This match itself, I don't see this being the kind of match that I would particularly enjoy. I don't know if I'd want to see guys with their hands wrapped in tape and then punching each other with glass. I don't know if that's something that would be necessarily up my alley. That's a little bit too blood and guts for my taste of what I like in wrestling. But
you can look up Axel Rotten and Balls Mahoney did have one of these matches before in the old school ECW, and it was violent, it was bloody. But the way I have this one going down is once everyone's hands are covered in glass, they legitimately just start punching each other repeatedly in the face, and they all start bleeding and pass out, and the match ends in a no contest in about 90 seconds. Because that's all you need for this one.
Yeah, 90 seconds might be a little short, but I get your point. You're just giving the crowd what they want. They want the blood and guts. And to me,
hold on. 90 seconds of the match, but Sandman's entrance takes about 13 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it's just on repeat. Enter the Sandman is on repeat. Somebody's got their iPad work or their iPod working overtime backstage. Yeah, I mean the ECW crowd, to me, the hardcore ECW marks to me are not the type that typically stand on ceremony or are particularly concerned with pomp and circumstance. So for you to get right to the point with the blood and guts, I think they probably would have appreciated that. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of the thinking when you're a hardcore ECW person. You just kind of want to get to the meat of the thing. So for these guys to have this kind of match, and for it not to go very long, I don't think it should have gone very long anyway. This kind of stuff, for me, a little bit goes a really long way. So when you're doing a match like this, the shorter the better, in my opinion.
I definitely take issue with the fact that you said that ECW fans just want to see the blood and guts. Because, like I said, as an ECW fan growing up, I loved watching the Dean Malenko versus Rey Mysterio, or Eddie Guerrero, the Jerry Lynn versus Rob Van Dam, the Lance Storms, like all of the actual in-ring technicians that we had. These things just happen to happen there. I will say, spoiler alert, New Jack is nowhere on this card because we didn't need any more justifiable homicides happening either.
Yeah, no, I don't think you did. And just to clarify, I didn't mean to say that that's all all ECW fans are waiting for. I just meant to say that when it was time for the blood and guts, I understand ECW fans enjoyed the cruiserweight stuff and enjoyed the technical wrestling and enjoyed seeing the Tanakas and the Guerreros, the Malenkos, and guys like that. What I'm trying to say is that I think when it came time for the blood and guts, that you didn't want to make a meal out of it. You just wanted to get to the point. If there are two guys that are going to have a blood feud, they just wanted to get to the blood and guts of the match, as opposed to, I don't need to be jockeying for position for you to get there. Once you get into this kind of match, when it's this kind of stiff, it's going to get bloody, it's going to get ugly, and it's going to be over as fast as it starts. That's what I meant to say.
Kind of like how the Tyson fight the other week should have been, but somehow that went an 8-round draw, and I'll never understand that.
I didn't get a chance to see it. I was going to order it, and I decided to have a charcuterie platter and watch Netflix instead.
Yeah, you definitely took the better option on that one. I'm not going to lie.
I think so too.
All right, well, that's how that one ends. So now we're going to move on to the next one. And again, we're going to showcase some, I don't want to say new talent, but newish, maybe a year and a half, 2 years into his run. And we had the one that won the Elimination Chamber, Bobby Lashley, going up against Hardcore Holly. And this one is literally just a Bobby Lashley 3-minute squash on Hardcore Holly, because that's what it needed to be. We're building him. I don't want to erase him from the brand because, again, you need to build up new talent. Lashley was talented. Lashley needed a mouthpiece, in my opinion. And it could have happened that Heyman became his mouthpiece, but for whatever reason, that never happened. And yeah, you have Lashley going over Hardcore Holly in about 3 minutes, just a complete squash.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. If you look at going back to what we discussed previously in a couple of other matches, you have established stars like a Hardcore Holly who had a pretty long run at this point. It was a 12-year run with WWF and WWE at this point. So he was established, maybe not a main event guy, but certainly an upper mid-card guy towards the latter half of his career. So, and, for me as well, like, what do you do with a guy like Hardcore Holly in 2006, 2007? It made sense for him to be in the ECW brand. He kind of had that attitude. Kind of revitalized him a little bit as well, from being kind of lost in the shuffle to becoming somebody who was viable on the ECW roster, somebody who was established again as a bit of a badass. So I think it was perfect placement to put him on the brand. I like that he was there. And I think it makes perfect sense, again, for you to have somebody like Bobby Lashley just run through Hardcore Holly, and Hardcore Holly could bump around for him, sell for him, make him look like $1 million. And he's beaten somebody now who's established, who has a name, who has some recognition. And I think this is a great way to utilize both guys. It was a great booking.
That's it. Like, when you had Bob Holly, challenging Brock Lesnar for the WWE title a year or two before this, nobody believed he was going to win. It was just a way to get him back on TV after Lesnar broke his neck. Yeah. Bob Holly is not a main event man. Bob Holly is somebody that can bump for somebody, make them look good, give them a couple of stiff shots to kind of welcome them to the business, and then you move on to the next. Bob Holly is the perfect hand that you need in any company.
Absolutely. Like a Billy Gunn. A Billy Gunn is the same idea for me. I think Billy Gunn would be
or a Goldust, kind of the same thing.
Although Goldust, I think Goldust could have been a main event guy. I think Billy Gunn could have been a main event guy. So there's a bit of a difference there. But to your point, you get these workhorse guys who are established. They know how to get younger guys over, and they have that name recognition. They have that name identity, that brand identity, that people, they remember them. They have nostalgia for them from various times in their careers, with a Goldust or with a Hardcore Holly. Bob Sparkblood Holly, depending on what era you're sort of gravitating towards from your nostalgic point of view. You definitely are able to sort of harken back and think, oh, I kind of really want to see Hardcore Holly win because he's a guy that I remember growing up watching. But then when he does the job to Bobby Lashley, it helps get Bobby Lashley over. So that nostalgia pop, the nostalgia factor is never to be dismissed in getting younger guys over.
Well, that's just it. Like, Bob Holly was in so many different generations to the fact that he was in the Midnight Express, for God's sakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Him, a bombastic Bob and bodacious Bart. That's right.
All right. Well, with that said, I'm going to move on to my next one. I've only got two more left, so we're getting near the end here. But my next match is Simon Dean versus Stevie Richards. And if you can understand why I'm doing this one, you can truly get in my brain. I want to know if you know where I'm going with this. Do you have any idea?
Well, why was Simon Dean and not Nova?
All right. Well, we're getting. Do you see where I'm going at all right now?
Not really, no. But was it the Blue World Order?
So we have Simon Dean and Stevie Richards. What happened on WCW Nitro approximately 7 years before this?
I don't know.
You had Hollywood Hogan, who is also known in this version as Hollywood Nova, against Big Sexy Kevin Nash, also as Big Stevie Cool. And what was that wonderful move that won Kevin?
You're doing a finger point of doom.
We're doing the finger poke of doom.
Well, that would coincide with this train wreck of a pay-per-view. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
So we do the finger. We have a conversation between the two where Stevie Richards talks to him and he's like, "Man, remember when you were Nova? You're not Simon Dean." Like, he gets them to do Nova, and then they do the finger poke of doom. Nova wins. They're celebrating, but instead of that being the end, all of a sudden the familiar music hits, and you hear the master and the ruler of the world come out to his music, and you get Psycho Sid coming out. And then we have Psycho Sid taking on the Blue World Order in a 3-on-1 handicap. By the way, Blue Meanie just shows up. We'll figure out how he gets there later. But
he just runs after they were maybe having the celebration. The last joke was on them. He runs in to celebrate.
Exactly. And then you get Psycho Sid coming in because God knows you're a Sid mark. God knows I hate Sid, but Sid's ECW work is his best work. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but he comes out, power bombs all three of them, gets the win, fist bumps a couple of people, and walks out.
I am astounded that you put Sid on this. I can't believe you put Sid on. I'm actually, like, my job just picking it up off the floor here. Is he now a member of the ECW brand, or is this just a one-off?
This is 100% a one-off because no one wants to see Sid again. It's nostalgia. It's beautiful.
Yeah, love it. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely perfect, especially when you do that, the finger poke of doom thing, and the crowd thinks that that's it, and then they sort of they're deflated by this just complete travesty. They're hoping for this competitive match. And then you bring them right back when you get the familiar music, you get the pop of the crowd, you bring them right back into it. This is when you're manipulating the emotions of the crowd. You have them completely dejected, and then suddenly Sid comes out. They get a pop from a guy they haven't seen in a WWF ring at this point in 9 years. So that's a lot of fun. I like that a lot. That's great. Again, folks, we're agreeing a ton, but this particular event was so absolutely unbearably bad that anything that
no, Jay, I'm not done.
Okay.
On his walk up the ramp, he slips and he breaks his leg.
Of course he does. And that's the end of it. You never see him again. Is that it?
And then the Blue World Order music hits and they celebrate, and Sid just gets kind of pushed off the ramp, never to be seen again.
You just get gets slid off into the ditch from Roadkill on the highway.
Well, no, Roadkill wasn't on this pay-per-view. We couldn't get him, so unfortunately we got Sid.
Okay, very well done, my friend. Very well crafted. we're in a very jovial mood here today, folks, because it is the holiday season, the Christmas season, and we are agreeing to agree on a lot of this stuff. And as much as I hate to see Sid break his leg again, I do love the idea of him power bombing the Blue World Order and getting that pop that I feel he deserves. So that's great. I like that booking. It's a fun spot. And you know how I am. You can never have too much nostalgia, especially at this point in my fandom in 2020 and going into 2021. The more nostalgia, the better for me. It just brings me back to a really happy place in my childhood and in my wrestling fandom. So great job on that. And unless you have anything else to say, unless you're gonna hit Sid with a car and then have him come back to face Rikishi in a Falls Count Anywhere match, I think that we're ready to go on to our main event of the evening.
Yeah, Sid's playing softball at this point, so we're good. His leg healed. He's on second base. But yes, that brings us to our main event of the evening. And if you like nostalgia, boy, do I have a couple of treats for you here, my friend. Okay. So we have Sabu, who won the match earlier against Rob Van Dam, challenging the Big Show for the ECW Championship. And again, I know that this is kind of repeat booking, but it's an Extreme Rules match because it's Sabu and it has to be.
Okay.
So what we have is Sabu pulling out all the stops, just the usual. Jesus Christ, what is it? Is it Cain and Abel? No, those are the brothers. David and Goliath. That's who I'm thinking of. The other Bible story. Trying to take down the giant. Giant's not going down. Chair shots aren't phasing them. Nothing's phasing them. Blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, the lights go out. The lights come back on, and Taz and Tommy Dreamer are in the ring. We get a 3-on-1. They're beating on them. All of a sudden, the lights go out. The lights come on. Who's in the ring to help the Big Show? Jerry the King Lawler. Here to avenge his extremely crappy wrestling ECW vendetta that he had 10 years ago. You have Lawler and Big Show beating on the extremists. It's somehow working because that's what wrestling booking does. Lights go out again because you can't have too many lights out. Lights come on. Somehow, only Big Show and Sabu are in the ring. They've gotten rid of everybody, but they're both knocked out from everything. The ref is counting. He gets to 9. They both get up. Sabu ends up getting up and hits the Arabian facebuster for the win. Sabu walks out as your new ECW champion.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get this. I understand why you booked this. I'm not shitting on your booking. I personally cannot stand that lights out, lights on thing. I thought it was stupid 20 years ago. I think it's stupid today. It makes sense for guys like The Undertaker and Kane. But other than that, I think it's the dumbest way to get people back into interfering in a match that I've ever seen. I understand why you did it because it's a complete homage to ECW, and for that reason, I like it a lot the way that you did it because it as I said, it's a love letter to ECW in a lot of ways, and it makes sense that you have reignite all these old feuds. I mean, you had Taz versus Lawler, I think at the I don't know if it was the first or second one night stand, but it was
a second one, and it only lasted like 30 seconds, and then Taz went on the commentary.
Yeah, that's right. So I totally get all that. I understand why you did what you did. And from an ECW fan perspective, I'm sure that ECW fans will love it. I just think that lights out, lights on thing is so stupid. So just from an outsider's perspective, I think I hate it. I would not be a fan of this match, seeing it for that reason. But if I was an ECW fan, I'd absolutely love it.
Now, did you say outsider's perspective just to get a Kevin Nash pop there, or what was going on?
Oh, absolutely. I want to get as much Nash as I can. There should be, there's no much thing as TMN, too much Nash.
You know what? I say that as I'm wearing an NWO Wolfpack t-shirt right now, so I guess I'm there with you, brother.
So you're literally lining Nash's pockets while you're shitting on him. So that's you know what, that actually coincides with the holiday season. Good for you. I like that.
Give to as many people as you can, my friend.
I like it. Very, very well done. Very, very well done. This whole card was very well booked. Other than the main event, which I just for personal reasons didn't like, but again, as an ECW fan, would have probably absolutely adored. And seeing like the nostalgia pops that you just alluded to, yeah, it was great. You definitely booked a much stronger card than what we actually saw. And I think that if we had gotten this kind of card back in 2006 and this kind of booking, we might still be talking about an ECW brand in some form or fashion in 2020. Likely not, but it probably would have lasted longer than it did. So I think with this booking, what you've done is you've prolonged the life of ECW. You've given it some fresh blood, and you've also made the younger talents get over in a way that makes them look like stars going forward. As long as you keep some of the originals around and you don't make them look ridiculous, you keep them strong and have them have competitive matches with some of the younger talent, I think you're looking at a fairly strong presentation for ECW here. So good job, man.
Well, thank you so much, sir. It was really hard to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, but I tried my hardest.
You sure as hell did. I'm very, very pleased with that. And speaking of chicken, yeah, I mean, I'm having chicken for dinner tonight. We're gonna have a chicken fajita salad, so I'm looking forward to that. I can't tell you.
Oh, now I want shake and bake. Is that still a thing? I don't even know anymore.
I don't know. Isn't that when you when you do a whip it and then you smoke a joint?
I thought it was just the when Ricky Bobby and Cal Norton Jr. pass each other on the racetrack, but I could be wrong.
Okay, perfect. Well, we should maybe come up with a way to do like a virtual like shake and bake fist bump maybe over our Christmas Zoom call.
Yeah, we can do that. We can make it happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, considering it's the Christmas season and we're not going to punish each other this month, I think I have a show lined up for you next week.
Okay, pal. I'm anxious to hear this one. What do you got for me? I'm hoping the hatchet is indeed buried.
I'm thinking you're going to do WWF In Your House, It's Time.
Aha. I love that. From December of 1996, my favorite year in the business. I love that. I can't wait to cover that one. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. That's a show that is near and dear to my heart. I love that show. It could definitely be booked way better, and I would love to rebook it. But yeah, I'm gonna have fun rebooking that one. And if you've never seen this one, bud, you're gonna enjoy watching it. It's a fun little watch. You get to see some really good. I mean, the opening match is Flash Funk versus Leaf Cassidy. So you got Scorpio versus Al Snow in the opening match. It was a really fun little opening contest, and it whet the appetites of the pay-per-view audience as well as the crowd in attendance. So it was in West Palm Beach, Florida. If I'm not mistaken.
I think my favorite part of this show is the fact that it's under 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean that's the one merciful thing about this ECW event too, is that it was just a shade over 2 hours, so it wasn't a full fledged. I mean, can you imagine watching this show if it was like 2020, like WWE like Battleground or something, where it was like 4.5 hours? Can you imagine?
Man, it was supposed to go 3 hours, but they ended it 45 minutes. The main event of the original show went on an hour and a half into it. So at essentially 9:30, you're getting the Extreme Elimination Chamber.
Which is good, because it was awful. So
I agree with you, but can you imagine as a paying customer, like, being like, what the hell's going on here? Whereas what I just booked, I feel like, what did the original one get? 90,000 pay-per-view buys? I'd like to think that I would have got at least 200,000 off of what I got, because I would have promoted this card. Because going into this original event, the only matches that were announced were the main event and the Hardys and Eminem.
Yeah, and one of which isn't even ECW. I mean, none of it really is.
But... No, none of it is. The only ECW part on it was Rob Van Dam.
Yeah, but I mean, that at least lines up more with the ECW philosophy, with the Extreme, the the Elimination Chamber obviously is a WWE gimmick, but it being like with weapons and all that kind of aligns a little bit more with the ECW theme. Whereas like Eminem versus the Hardys, why is SmackDown on this show? So I mean, that
because SmackDown and ECW were running house shows at the same time.
I know
that's why. But anyway, if you'll remember a few minutes ago, I asked you to think of your most overrated WWE or wrestling gimmicks in general.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
I'm actually going to use I'm going to use the entire Mount Rushmore for one gimmick, and it's DX.
Oh, well played, sir.
Yeah, the only DX that I find acceptable is the original with Triple H, Chyna, and Shawn. That one was the one that I was like, okay, I'm fine with this. I think it should have been over after WrestleMania 14, and then maybe you do like bring them back together, like 10 years later or whatever you want to do, or 6 years later, however long you want to do it. If you want to bring them back together at that point, I think that would have had a much bigger impact than what we got when we had, all the different members of the like it's hard, right? Because I like the Outlaws, but I think the Outlaws.
No. But that's the thing is you're kind of contradicting yourself right now, because I feel like 15 minutes ago you were saying how Billy Gunn should have been a main event player and he's this and he's that, but
Yeah,
now he's on your Mount Rushmore of most overrated.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean Billy Gunn specifically. I'm saying the DX gimmick. I think the Outlaws were a gimmick in themselves within the DX gimmick. So they were getting over already on their own without DX. I understand DX helped them, but I think that, being where the product was going at that time, had you left them to their own devices, I think they would have gotten there anyway. X-Pac would have been fine working his own stuff, doing whatever he wanted to do, even as, coming in as 6, or even just, they're big in the late 90s and using people's real names. So just calling him Sean Waltman or calling him Waltman or something would have been, better than X-Pac. I wasn't a fan of X-Pac's gimmick. I didn't mind it in the beginning, but towards the end it was awful. And Triple H obviously was so talented that he was going to get somewhere no matter what. I think that actually the DX stuff with Triple H in 98 and in the beginning of 99 actually hindered him more than it helped him. Had he just gone on by himself after WrestleMania 14, I think he might have gotten to the main event level faster. So I just think DX as a whole, other than the original nucleus, of the first 3 members, well, with Rick Rude, of course, as well. We've got to throw him in there because of talked about him this week. But having those 4 originals, I think that was my favorite iteration. Anything else after that was just fluff, and I didn't need to see it. I'm just so over DX and over their hyped popularity and how much they contributed to the business. They weren't nearly as impactful as the Horsemen, as the NWO, certainly, and even the Hart Foundation for me.
So essentially what you're saying is the gimmick itself is overrated, but the workers deserve their own due.
Yeah, the workers all deserve their own due. I just think that, I don't find that funny. I didn't find it funny in 98. I didn't find it funny in 2006. I just think that kind of humor is so juvenile and stupid. It appeals to the lowest common denominator in a lot of ways, like these pee-pee and poo-poo jokes and talking about your junk. I just think, yeah, it's okay occasionally. You might get a pop out of me here and there once in a while, but to do it every week, in and out, peeing on bikes and showing salamis, it's like I've had it, it's so stupid. I mean, they should be synonymous with the, lights on, lights off gimmick. They should be coinciding, those two.
Well, that's fair enough. I would like to think that we did a pretty good job rebooking this one.
Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely. What's on your Mount Rushmore of bad gimmicks, by the way, just before we go?
Like the bad gimmicks or overrated gimmicks?
Overrated gimmicks, sorry.
I'm probably going to get shit on for this, but my number 1 is The Rock. And then I'm going to go with probably Rey Mysterio, like current Rey Mysterio, not older Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
Matt Riddle.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God, yes. I don't understand it at all. I don't get
it. I'm also going to throw in something that's going to probably get hated by you, but that's Kevin Nash.
No, I understand why you wouldn't like Nash. I mean, you don't like Nash anyway, so it doesn't surprise me that you wouldn't like just Kevin Nash.
Actually, hold on. I got to take off Rey Mysterio. I got to throw Lex Luger on there because Lex Luger made no sense to me ever.
But that wasn't really a gimmick. I mean, are you talking about the Made in America Lex Luger, or just the total package, or?
I'm talking about the total package, like the WCW, strap the rocket to him, do this, do that. You know what? Can I just say WCW from 90, 99 till the end. Can that just be one? Because there was really nothing good coming out of there.
The 99 was my favorite year for WCW.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that down the road, I'm sure.
We absolutely will, because I want to have a very conversation.
We need. I think we need to broaden our horizons sooner. We've done nothing but the Fed, so.
We have some stuff coming up on tap. I'm pretty sure that, if I'm not mistaken, based on some of our conversations, we do have some Turner brand exclusive content on the way. Some WCW is on the way, if I'm not mistaken. So,
some Turner classics, if you will.
Yes, exactly. I like that quite a bit.
Well, Jay, I had a good time rebooking this one. As much as I hated it, I always enjoy talking to you. As much as you frustrate the hell out of me, I love you. But I think we can put a bow on this show. If you got anything else to say, let me know.
No, I got it. I agree with you. I think that this week was fairly tame, and obviously last week was a real high octane episode. So I'm thankful that we had a very sort of subdued episode. We had some really good wrestling banter. We'll see where we get to next week in terms of the In Your House. It's time. I can't wait to go back and rewatch that one, and to have you go back and watch it. And we'll see how we do with the rebook. We might get some spirited conversation next week, because it's my favorite era, my favorite year. So I'm sure you're going to be pushing my buttons just a little bit, which is totally fine. But with that being said, unless you have anything else to contribute, my friend, you can check us out on Twitter at goodfriends_enemies. Good_enemies. And then on Instagram, you can check us out at good__enemies. And we are out of time. So ladies and gentlemen, for myself and Tyrone, you've been listening to the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast.
Bye.